Hi guys, so the exportation of bivalve molluscs continues to be a headache for the fishing industry and a huge embarrassment for both DEFRA and George Eustice, the Environment Secretary. Now, what happened was back in 2004, the European Union brought in a new rule. Remember, the UK was part of the European Union back in 2004. They brought in this new rule that would stop the exportation or the importation into the EU from third countries of non-purified bivalve molluscs. Now, they could be imported if it was to restock farms in the EU or whatever, but not for human consumption. It seems that DEFRA and George Eustice didn't understand the difference here. They didn't understand the difference between the certification required for importation for restocking and the paperwork or regulations required for the importation for consumption. So you're going to hear from Martin Oates from the BBC, who's going to explain this problem, how DEFRA dealt with it or didn't, and also the reaction from the fishing industry. So let's hear what he had to say.
The Environment Secretary is claiming that the EU has now retrospectively changed the wording of its own regulations. The Commission has responded. This is quite unusual. It hasn't commented publicly on this for a couple of months. And it says that the text has been clarified. And it says such a clarification appeared necessary because UK operators clearly expressed the intention to use this certificate. That's the health certificate needed to export, to enter into the EU live bivalve molluscs intended for human consumption, while such a certificate is intended only for the import of live animals into the EU for the purpose of breeding or repopulation of EU waters.
So basically, the exporters were using the wrong paperwork. Now, they were told to use this paperwork by DEFRA. DEFRA is responsible for this paperwork. They're responsible for how the export industry is to operate when it comes to these products. DEFRA are at fault here. DEFRA didn't understand the difference between the documentation required to export for restocking and the exportation for consumption.
Now, this is complicated, but essentially the EU says, yes, there's animal health certification, and that's fine if you want to export molluscs to restock farms, for instance. But if you're going to export them for human consumption, then you also need public health certification.
So how have shellfish producers reacted?
Well, a number of them are now considering legal action against DEFRA, and their view is that DEFRA either knew or should have known that there would be a big problem with this. But I spoke...
Yes, and they are right. DEFRA should have known this. The big problem with this is that either DEFRA didn't know or they were lying to the fishing industry. Also, when it comes to George Eustice, did George Eustice not know, or was he lying when he was responding to questions in the media about this particular issue? Now, you have to remember, George Eustice used to be a member of UKIP. George Eustice became a Conservative and he continued to campaign for Brexit. He told the fishing industry, he told agriculture that things would get better. Things would be, there would be a sunlit upland in a sense when the UK left the European Union. And now there is this disaster. He said, we have to take back control. Who is in control here? The European Union are making the demands. They say you have to follow this rule. Remember, the UK used to be part of the rule-making process. If it disagreed with this rule, it could have lobbied for it in the European Parliament and the European Commission and had it changed. But now it's out. So it's a rule taker, no longer a rule maker.
To John Homeyard, who's got the UK's biggest mussel farm off the coast of Lyme Bay in Devon, and put to him these counterclaims from the government on the one hand saying the EU's now changed its own rules, and the EU saying, no, nothing's changed, we've just clarified them. This was his response.
As far as I can see, they've not changed the regulations by a single word. What they have changed is some of the wording in one of the certificates, which clarifies things that obviously DEFRA found slightly difficult to comprehend because they perhaps didn't read all the actual regulations.
So DEFRA didn't actually, well, this is his interpretation, but it seems He's probably right. DEFRA didn't actually read all the regulations. DEFRA, the department, the government department, this falls back to the problem I've talked about before. Government were not prepared for Brexit. But instead of actually being honest and saying we didn't actually understand Brexit, we were not prepared, what they've been doing since the end of the transition period, they've been blaming businesses. Boris Johnson has been doing it. Michael Gove has been doing it. Jacob Rees-Mogg has been doing it. Many politicians have been blaming businesses for not being ready. And here is a clear example of how DEFRA, the government, were not ready.
We've heard this week that 11 of the 266 sea areas have been reclassified as Class A rather than Class B, which would mean shellfish from those areas of water could be exported to the EU. How much difference will that really make?
Very little, and I think that's clear really given the proportion which have been reclassified as A. So that still leaves the vast majority of the waters around the coast of England as Grade B or below, either permanently or crucially during the harvesting season. So Lyme Bay in Devon, for instance, Class A in the summer, that's not much use because the shellfish harvesting season runs, depending on the area, from September to April.
Wouldn't you think that DEFRA would know this? Wouldn't you think that the government department would understand these problems and be able to communicate it to the fishing communities, the fishing industry? But obviously they did not.
So that's not terribly helpful. Meanwhile, DEFRA is clear that its priority now is to assist businesses to adapt to the new trading conditions. With those.
Once again, how is this taking back control? How are you taking back control if you have to adapt, if you have to spend money? Now, in some cases, it's the government spending money. In other cases, the government are not spending money. They're providing advice or they're helping with the paperwork. But remember, Brexiteers said things would get better. They said things would get better from day one. This has clearly been worse. It's not better. And the problem continues to be that the liars, the Jacob Rees-Moggs, the Nigel Farages, the Michael Goves, the George Eustices of this world continue to remain in their position. It really blows my mind, the fact that somebody who has been connected to the fishing industry since the beginning, Nigel Farage, how is it possible that the fishing communities are not angry with him? How is it possible that they don't march on his home? I'm not suggesting that they do that. I just don't understand how they have not done that. Can they not organize a protest? This is the man who went to the fishing communities, met with these people months and even years before Brexit, promising them that things would get better, promising them sunlit uplands, promising them the ability to export into the EU without any problems, that they would all become millionaires. And now he's completely absent, and none of these people have a problem with that.
Those new trading conditions, of course, involve complete exclusion from what had previously been their main market. And indeed, DEFRA says it can't provide financial support for businesses with no clear adaptation plan.
So basically, you're on your own. Sorry, we lied to you. Well, our politicians lied to you, told you things would get better. Now you're realizing that things are not getting better, things are getting worse. And we're only going to help you if your business is viable. So we've actually made your business unviable. And because your business is unviable, we're not actually going to help you.
Here's Mussel Farmer John Homeyard again.
Yeah, it just shows the shallowness of their understanding of our industry. They've never paid this industry enough attention or any attention. Otherwise, they would understand what they're talking is complete rubbish. Their solutions might stand up for one or two businesses, but for the bulk of the business we're talking about, there is no solution other than reinstate the trade with Europe.
Shellfish producer John.
Yes, the only solution for the vast majority of these businesses that have been affected, and it's not just the fishing industry, it's also farming, it's all types of exporters. The only solution in many cases is to rejoin the single market and the customs union. But that would not be Brexit, as some Brexiteers would say. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are much appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?